Teach me about the Great Lakes. Teach me about the Great Lakes. Welcome back to Teach Me About the Great Lakes, a twice-monthly podcast in which I, a Great Lakes novice, ask people who are smarter and harder working than I am to teach me all about the Great Lakes. My name is Stuart Carlton, and I work with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, and I'm joined today by the one, the only, Carolyn Foley. Carolyn, what's up?
I'm currently playing a million keyboards. What's up with you, Stuart?
I am also doing well, more or less, sometimes less, but A-okay. Actually, I'm really good. Here's why. Once a year, so far for the last couple of years, we get the most specialist episode imaginable, and this is that time. And this is our live from the IAGLR, what is that? The International Association for Great Lakes Research Conference.
Nice.
I am super excited to be broadcasting from IAGLR live this year. And what we're doing is we are interviewing a couple of award winners. We're lucky enough this year to be able to interview Dr. Hank Vanderploeg, who is a research ecologist and ecosystems dynamics branch chief at the NOAA Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory and the IAGLR Lifetime Achievement Award winner. And also Ms. Margaret Lansing, who's a communications specialist and the Jack Valentine Award winner. So it should be a whole lot of fun. As I mentioned, we are joined today by Dr. Hank Vanderploeg, the IAGLR Lifetime Achievement Award winner. Hank, how are you? And while Hank gets back on, we're also joined by Margaret Lansing. Margaret, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Stuart. Hi, Carolyn. Great to be here.
Thank you for joining us. And I just wanted to mention just really quickly while Hank joins again, that the Jack Valentine Award winner, Margaret Lansing, that award recognizes important and sustained efforts to inform and educate the public and policymakers on Great Lakes issues, raising awareness and support for Great Lakes protection and restoration. So the fact that you were given this award is pretty awesome. Thank you
really
for everything you've done.
I'm pretty excited about it.
And as the Science Communication Award is near and dear to the work that we do at Sea Grant, and so I'm very excited about it too.
Right. And Hank, I think, has joined again. The IAGLR Lifetime Achievement Award recognizes important and continued contributions to the field of Great Lakes research over a period of 20 years or more.
So that is a heck of a thing as well. And so we have a whole bunch of questions that we actually want to get to. And so I'm going to get started right away with those questions. The first one is this. Oh, hold on.
Stuart, come on.
That's the hotline ringing. Huh. Oh, weird. Okay, well, we just got a call to our hotline. Well, that's unexpected. So for those who are listening, we have a hotline. You can call it. It's 765-496-IISG and leave a message. And sometimes we play them on the air. And this message, so we introduce everybody who we have a message for is the Great, because this is Teach Me About the Great Lakes. And so this first one actually is from Bo Bunnell, it looks like. Did I get that name right? The Great Bo Bunnell. And he's calling with a bit of a message for Hank. So let's take a listen.
You know, one thing that sticks out to me is that if you're an invasive invertebrate in the Great Lakes, look out. Hank is coming to study you and to explain your effects to the rest of us.
Bo is absolutely right. Hank, it's hard to talk about your work without thinking about, like, you wrote a classic paper back in 2002, you and colleagues, about the distribution and ecological impacts on invasive species in the Great Lakes. Can you remember, if you can think back that far, I cannot, but I'm hoping you can. That's why you're an award winner. Why did you decide to do this work? What drove you to study, if you're there?
That's an important question. My interest in invasive species goes back almost 10 years earlier. I can say that the 2002 paper in particular arose from a workshop a couple of years earlier in which invasive species experts, including myself, were asked by the organizers to understand and then predict the consequences of a wave of invasive species that was likely to have a significant impact on the Great Lakes.
Interesting. Okay, well, we'll revisit that in a moment and come back. But Margaret, actually, so we did have a question for you that I think was really important too. And so what I wanted to ask you was, oh, geez, it's happening again. Totally unexpected. Oh my goodness. Oh, another message. You're probably wondering how many of these we're going to get. Since Carolyn isn't right next to me, we could get a lot. Anyway, so Margaret, this is a message from Debbie Lee, who I think is the director of your lab, if that's correct. Let's hear what Debbie had to say.
The depth, breadth, and longevity of her efforts in championing the Great Lakes through communication is absolutely astounding. And I say that without hesitation, and I believe she's unparalleled in her efforts.
So you are an unparalleled science communicator, and that's near and dear to our heart. How'd you get started in science communication?
Well, it's interesting, Stuart. I like to joke that I'm a recovering scientist. I started out on the research side, and I was saying at that award ceremony yesterday that used to be that we'd have tours at our lab in Ann Arbor, and people would come through, and I happened to work as a bench chemist in a lab that was very visually interesting. It had this big high vacuum cryogenic distillation line where I isolated gases, and I used dry ice and flames to isolate gas, seal off tubes of gases, and people would come in, and I loved to explain what I was doing, and people just seemed to appreciate me simplifying what looks so complicated. And so that kind of was how I got started, just being a ham on lab tours.
Being a ham on lab tours, that's fantastic. And a couple of, not that we have more people who are going to call in, and I hope that Stuart isn't going to play that ringing thing every single time we plan to play a clip. But a couple of in your nomination packet, a couple people did mention that the tours were where you really seemed to draw people in and do a really great job. So that's fantastic.
Thinking about like the science communication process, you've been at this for a while. So, one thing that I think people mention a lot was you did a great job of building trust with scientists. And I think that's really hard to do, but I think it's key. So how do you do that? Or how have you been able to build a trust and a rapport so that people know that you're not going to, that you're going to make science understandable without oversimplifying it, I guess?
Sure. Well, I think, I had the benefit of being on the science side and working in the same organization for many years. I've been in the same place at the Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab for 30 plus years. So I worked side by side as a scientist with a lot of the scientists that I'm doing the communications for. But I would say for people who don't have that advantage, that I think spending time talking with the scientists and building that rapport with them, building their trust, conveying back to them what you think that they're doing before sharing it out and seeing if they agree with what you're saying about that work really helps build the trust.
So one other thing, thinking about your career and kind of how it's gone, is like things have changed a lot, right? I mean, you started, since this is a lifetime award, you started kind of probably a bit ago, and without dating anybody too much. So how have you noticed like any sort of big picture changes to science communication over that time? Like what are things that are, I guess, either big changes or what are things that are better now than they used to be?
Oh, sure. Fantastic. Well, so for one thing, science communications is a phrase now that people know and recognize. When in the earlier days for research, we thought communicating was publishing a paper in a peer-reviewed journal. Like that was communicating your science. That was what you did, or you went to IAGLR and you give a presentation. So, if you fast forward to today, it's, there's just so many different communication avenues and a lot of them online. I definitely predate the internet. So with the internet and then with all the social media and, you can just reach so many people and you can engage a much broader audience. We're not just talking to our peers anymore. We're talking to all ages. We're trying to really reach out and talk more about why the science that we do is important to the Great Lakes, to the restoration of them, to informing science policies, to funding, to helping people make good, sound funding decisions based on our research.
So maybe we can, thanks, Margaret. That's a really nice lead. And maybe we could head back to Hank now to talk about the paper you talked about. And so Margaret was just talking about the importance of communicating the work that's being done. And the paper we talked about described and predicted the impacts of 6 different Ponto-Caspian species that had invaded the Great Lakes: zebra mussel, quagga mussel, a benthic amphipod, the round goby, and tube-nosed goby. So what is a Ponto-Caspian species?
These are species native to the Caspian and Black Seas and other water bodies nearby. What's important about them today is that inland river canals transported some of these species from those seas to the Baltic Sea, and then from there in ships' ballast water across the Atlantic to the St. Lawrence Seaway and thus to the Great Lakes. Others came directly from the Black Sea.
my understanding is this really started to become a problem like in the 90s, maybe late 80s, and then 90s is when our awareness really kicked off. Is that kind of match your recollection?
That is correct. These species were found during the mid 1980s for the first discovered.
What did your paper? So you sort of made some predictions and talked about the impacts in the the invasive species. How did that paper change our understanding of the issues in the Great Lakes, I guess?
Yes, thank you for asking. We were able to use existing ecological theory. We developed scenarios and plausible predictions and testable hypotheses for the Great Lakes as well as other water bodies where they could spread. So that's what its basic importance was.
And then you made a handful of predictions in there too. Did you find how were your predictions were basically accurate? But was there anything that surprised you, I guess, over the last 20 years since that paper came out? What surprised you about AIS?
Yeah, we were correct about the interactions, but what surprised me was the magnitude of the impact of the quagga mussels was much larger than I had anticipated. We had predicted its interactions, but not the magnitude of its impacts.
Why did that surprise you? What is it about the quagga mussel that surprised? That was unexpected, I guess.
Right. Well, there had been very little experience with it, and we had just observed its spread into deep water. And work subsequent of that, we continue to monitor its presence in the environment. And then we saw massive changes in the amount of phytoplankton found in the food web, particularly in Lake Michigan. Then I had done some experiments showing that they could indeed feed on the phytoplankton faster they can grow over much of the lake. So that was the demonstration that we had a real problem on our hands.
That's crazy. So, I mean, having worked in food web research myself in some places, the impact of the quagga mussels and the number of people that I've said, they're like, oh, zebra mussels. I'm like, no, quaggas. Quaggas are the crazy ones. One, I think Stuart has a clip about someone who had a comment about Hank and what he's doing. And then I'm going to ask Margaret a question.
Okay, I do. And per Carolyn's request, I will stop with the phone ringing gag, probably. But I reserve the right. Okay.
Hank's research has not only added to the conversation on understanding trophic dynamics in the Great Lakes, he's changed the conversation in many ways, and not many of us can brag that. And his understanding of the individual biology and audicology of zooplankton and other organisms is truly unique. So a hearty congratulations to Hank.
And that again was Hunter Carrick from Central Michigan University. So Margaret, you and Hank both work at the NOAA Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory. And Hank is a super impressive scientist, but there's a whole team of incredible scientists at that organization. So what's it like for you communicating these types of stories that are really completely changing the face of the way that people understand the Great Lakes?
Well, it's such a privilege and it's so much fun. We're like a family there. We're all in one building. Well, now we're not with COVID, but we've been managing to convene remotely. But we all know each other so well. You spend so many years together. Hank and I have been together for, I'll just say, above 33 years. I won't get into specifics. And so many of us have been there together for so long. So you really get to know each other and each other's science. And so it's just quite frankly a lot of fun, working together. There's a lot of camaraderie with our field teams and with the vessel crews, and they'll share pictures and they interact with the scientists. So there's a lot of interdisciplinary collaboration. And it's just such a privilege to be sitting there in a position like mine where I just have a broad reach by virtue of the fact that I'm working for NOAA. So it's a large organization and we have a loud microphone. And so can you imagine, just how much fun that is to share our science stories?
Yeah, that really does sound like it's a blast. I'm thinking about that. You're talking about this big interdisciplinary team, right? What do you think the secret is to like getting an interdisciplinary team together and getting them to do good work in your experience?
That's a great question. I'd say the secret is that we know from past experiences the benefits of working together, and so appreciate how a spirit of cooperation is basic to the advances in science that we can only do together as a team. Science, one might say, is a team sport. And as Margaret has already alluded to, we have a lot of fun working together.
But do you ever find, so I'm a social scientist by training, right? And so I find, something I struggle with a lot of times is getting added onto a project like at the last minute. I call it last paragraph disease. Do you ever find that it's hard to get the different disciplines together and like talking to each other? Because a lot of times, the language isn't even the same. Like, do you have any, thoughts on how to do that successfully?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can say part of that comes from our training. I come from an oceanographic background, and when you go out on a research cruise, you have a whole bunch of people on board with different skills that are needed that are brought together to understand what's going on in the environment. And the same thing applies to the Great Lakes. We're a cross between small lakes and the ocean. So a lot of the work we do on the Great Lakes would be the same sort of work we do on the oceans.
I'll just chime in on that one too, if you don't mind. Just, we're co-located there at our facility. And so we just all meet together, so the chemists get together with the biologists, with the physicists, and we sit in a room together and we talk about our projects. We propose research together. So you just have all those different teams. And then just by virtue of being there in Ann Arbor, we can serve. Now we're more of a virtual hub, but we can serve as a physical hub. We have workshops where people come in, and we're close to the university. And of course, we collaborate with the University of Michigan and our Cooperative Institute for Great Lakes Research. So just proximity and availability. And, these days with all these online tools like Zoom and GoToMeeting, in a way, that's been a silver lining of COVID. We've hosted webinars and things where the attendance is actually way up.
And so a lot of people have actually chimed in about that and been really admirers, I think, of the way you've been able to bring different people together. And we have a couple clips we want to play, no phone thingy. But imagine in your mind, listener, that there's a phone ringing now and I'm making a stilted, awkward, and unfunny joke about how it's a message when really they sent them in weeks ago. Okay, so here's one. This is actually Debbie Lee for you, Margaret. Let's hear what she has to say related to that sort of.
Reading her letters of support brought tears to my eyes because it was clear how many lives she's touched through promoting Great Lakes awareness and stewardship.
And I think that sort of speaks to what, and this is part of why you're a Jack Valentine Award winner, right, is lives that are touched through your communication. I think that that's something that not everybody thinks about when it comes to science, right? But when you're talking about these teams and everything, I think that's critical. And here's Steve Francoeur.
When you relate your own story of your professional journey from starting off as an EMU student to eventually working for NOAA, that really provides a great example to my current students at Eastern. And, you can sometimes see it in their eyes as it dawns on some of them that similar professional pathways are out there and open for them too.
So what I'm hearing here, Margaret, is that personal connection, right? That you seem to have made with students who are touring, or students you worked with, or with your teammates. Is that something that you intentionally work to create, or are you just a natural, I guess?
No, I think I am a bit of a natural, but it's also very deliberate and calculated, so I always coach people, no matter where you are, coach fellow communicators and people coming up. It's really all about your audience and knowing your audience. So in that example, we're having college students through, and so you're going to talk about their career trajectories. But in all cases, when you're communicating, with an educational hat on, because there's different types of communication, but when you're trying to educate people, I think you just really, the key is to put yourself in their shoes. And so there's a certain empathy that goes with that, like understanding, where's a kindergartner coming from, or where's a college student coming from, that sort of thing. So paying attention to your audience and just trying to put yourself, what are they seeing, when they hear you talk or read your tweet?
That's interesting how you bring that empathy into it, though, kind of explicitly, right? And so I realize that as I'm a relatively new manager. I just started a couple years ago. Before that, like most social scientists, I hate all people and want to spend no time with them if at all possible. And but realizing how I can kind of apply some of what I learned in grad school and in my research, right, to the management, where it's like it's the same sort of stuff. And so I think that it was really inspiring to hear people say that about you. And now, Hank, people actually had some good things to say about your collaborations and things like that. Here's our old friend, Ed Rutherford, right here.
His embrace of new technology and ideas and careful experiments on zooplankton and Dreissena feeding have kept him solidly in Pasteur's quadrant throughout his career.
All right, first of all, what is Pasteur's quadrant for those of us who don't know? For example, me.
Yes, we can think of research. Very often we think of basic research and applied research as two very different things. And we can actually think of it in terms of what is called Pasteur's quadrant, is we can think about basic research, which, for example, some of the great advances in physics were made without any thought of application. We can also think of research that was carried on later in Pasteur's career, where use-inspired basic research, fundamental research was carried on. So not only do we get a fundamental understanding of things, but at the same time, this is in the service of something that is very important for society. And so one of the things I stress with my ecologists is that we should be doing fundamental use-inspired research. We get the bang for the buck of understanding the world and at the same time serving society.
Yeah, I remember one time I was out with Brian Miller, the former Illinois Indiana Sea Grant director, and I was out, the best way to be out with Brian Miller, which was at a local public house, and he said, Stuart, you sit me down, this is when I just started, so he's going to dump all his wisdom on me, which is a wonderful opportunity. He said, Stuart, what's really important is the best research is used research, right? At least in terms of in the Sea Grant context, and that's so critical, and so it sounds to me like you kind of have that as well.
Yeah, that's something that's been very important and stressed in NOAA. We are public servants doing science in service of the public.
And so we do have one more clip from one of the scientists at GLERL, Dr. Ashley Elgin, who I think is a nice example of, she came on after Tom Nalepa, who I think may also be a Lifetime Achievement Award winner. And she's really run with some of the quagga mussel research, and she's doing so many cool things. So Stuart, would you like to play that bling bling?
I would like to play it. All right, bling bling, beep 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 beep.
You are certainly a major player in Great Lakes limnology, and I'm in awe of the depth and breadth of your knowledge. And as far as being a supervisor and mentor, you are very understanding, yet you still set a high bar. So as a result, in this last crazy year, it was a pretty productive one for me, and I mostly kept my sanity. So thanks for being a great colleague, and again, many congratulations.
That's wonderful. So what I've heard from both of these, Hank, is, this idea that you're always keeping up with new technology and you have a really strong depth and breadth of knowledge. What's the secret to that? Like, how do you, because I already, I'm not Lifetime Achievement Award eligible yet by dint of my age, but which is, I assume, why I didn't win. Like, how do you do that? How do you not kind of, ossify, I guess? Is there a secret to that?
It's just having a curiosity about the world, and the thing is, many of the problems we face today, whether there be fisheries production or harmful algae, these are the same questions, but as new tools become available, such as in the area of the molecular and genetics tools that are coming online now, we have a toolbox where we can answer some of these, do a better job of answering some of these questions. So I've always been in favor of keeping up with the technology to help us understand some nagging questions that have long been with us.
So I just have to paint a picture for your audience, which is in terms of ossification. Well, Hank puts us all to shame. He works out on, what is that thing, Hank? Like a stair stepper? No, fast forward, elliptical. I think they call them ellipticals now. And he is in there. He's intense and he has the healthiest diet. He puts us all to shame. So that's partly how he's in the game. He is the healthiest person I know.
You know, it's important, right? Isn't it? And actually, that came up a couple of different times. One, I didn't get a clip from our director, Thomas Hook, but when I told him we were going to interview you, he mentioned the elliptical. That came to be. And then I think we have another one here. Let me just go ahead and play this from, is it Bo Bonnell? Here we go.
To have a good memory of cross-country skiing with Hank one night in Muskegon, Michigan, probably a decade or so ago. I was a novice, not from the Great Lakes region, and he was a great teacher on the best techniques. And for those of you that don't know about Hank's dedication, it extends not only to research, but also to physical fitness. Just another inspirational side of Hank. He was hard to keep up with on the trails that winter night.
Right. So, so I guess one thing I will say is, from the calls, and we have additional calls that we'll play for you at the end, or we'll send to you. We'll figure that out in a second. But from the calls that we received, and we sent that out relatively recently, and we got a great response because everybody just wanted to share some thoughts about you and their congratulations. It was really clear that you both have like tremendous enthusiasm for the Great Lakes and sharing things like that. And so we had one last clip that I think we wanted to play.
Encounter with Margaret's educational programs was along the shores of the Detroit River at Detroit River Days. My group was hosting an educational booth on fishing and associated fishing advisories, and a little girl came up to our booth and had a sea lamprey tattoo on her arm and was excitedly talking about a booth she had just been to that had sea lamprey. During a break, I went over to check it out, and sure enough, Margaret Lansing was running an educational invasive species program for kids K through 12.
And that was Donna Cashin. She was talking about River Days in Detroit, Dr. Donna Cashin from Wayne State University. And when you mentioned earlier, like, where is the kindergartner coming from? Earlier, one of you saw my second grader come in. You may have seen her come in. And when you say, look at it from their perspective, tattoos are like perfect, just perfect. So you've obviously done a really great job. And thank you.
That's really wonderful. So one thing before we move on, one thing I want to ask, because I want to get your opinion on this, Margaret, because this is something I think about a lot. So how do you balance, transitioning? So you take that enthusiasm, that's wonderful. And you take that human touch, which we've heard over and over and over again, that I think is obviously a cornerstone of the great work you do. But things have changed so quickly over in media, right? How do you balance like knowing how to be progressive and like on the new thing versus trying to do solid work and stuff like that? That's something we think about a lot, and our communications coordinators are very good at it, but I'm just always curious about it. Like, how do you know it's time to jump on TikTok or Twitch or whatever versus, not at work, but I mean, and versus, we want to stick to the tried and true. Do you have any thoughts on how to do that?
Yeah. So we embrace, and I think my guess is a lot of the Sea Grant folks, I know we're embracing the new technology. I really think that that's the way to go. The bread and butter is always going to be peer-reviewed publications, no doubt. We are scientists. We're going to talk to our peers. But in terms of those science translation products where you're making them available, I say go for the reach, and so you got your Twitter, your Facebook, and, so we're trying to go with the standard avenues now. If we had more people, we would do it all because I just love it. I think that's the way to go, because you can amplify each other and tag each other, and it just it takes on a life of its own.
That it sure does. And then, Hank, I have one sort of that's interesting, actually. And it's really inspiring, to tell you the truth. And that's part of why you're the Jack Valentine Award winner, right? Is that you're able to do that and roll with those changes, roll with the tides of change as they come through. So, Hank, thinking big picture, over the course of your career, this is a question I'd like to ask. What is the story of the Great Lakes, like from your perspective, when it comes to your research or whatever, and how it's evolved over the course of your career? Like, what is the big picture story or take home or conclusion that you might draw?
Yes, that's an important question. Early on, we were very concerned about eutrophication, and we still are. That is the addition of nutrients to the water, which caused harmful algal blooms, and we're still getting them in Lake Erie, and we're trying to figure out what are the causes and what mitigation strategies can we take on. And the other thing has been invasive species. That's the other major theme. In the case of Lake Erie, they've exacerbated the harmful algal blooms. In other systems, we've reduced nutrient loading, and this has caused lower productivity in the lakes, with these invasives robbing different points of in the food web, and this has been causing problems of loss of our offshore fisheries, both our commercial as well as our very important recreational fisheries. So there are these. So these are the issues that still face us. Climate change will be an issue that we really can't predict what's going to happen from our current knowledge base. So that will be something that we're going to have to deal with and try to develop mitigation strategies for that.
Yeah, the story isn't over, is it, in terms of the challenges associated with this amazing resource that I've really enjoyed learning about over the last, at this point, 33 episodes of this show. So that's really great. And I'm so excited and fired up that, we have people like the both of you who are so passionate, so compassionate. That seems to be a very consistent theme that's had, just this really great impact on scientists, educators, students, and many others, because the challenges are not light going forward, right? And so we need people just like you to do it. That's really interesting, but that's actually not why we invited you here on Teach Me About the Great Lakes this beautiful Friday afternoon. The reason that we invite you here on Teach Me About the Great Lakes is to ask you two questions. And the first question is this, and we'll start with Hank, Lifetime Achievement Award winner. If you could choose to have a great donut for breakfast or a great sandwich for lunch, which one would you choose?
Once a week, I would indulge in a donut. We have a donut day at the lab every Friday, and I make sure I get in early to get my favorite donut.
That is perfect. So what is your favorite donut? You're in Ann Arbor, right? So when I'm in Ann Arbor and I want to get the Hank Vanderplug favorite donut, where should I go and what should I get?
Oh, the Dexter Bakery.
And we will leave a link to that in our show notes, which you, listener, can find at teachmeaboutthegreatlakes.com/33, the number 33, because this is episode 33.
We will also leave a bunch of other links too, but the most important one will be where to get a donut or a sandwich.
You mean other donut places?
Yes.
Oh, no, links to all their work and all that. Yeah. That's fine. We'll do that, yes. But more importantly, is it Dexter's? Dexter Donuts. We will do. Yeah. All right, Margaret, how's about you? Sandwich or donut?
Stuart, I'm going with a sandwich, and I'm just going to say that Hank and I, over the years, back in the day, would go to Big Boys together and have lunch. And not just me. Hank was a mentor to so many young people, and it was within walking distance of a previous facility, not the one we're in now, because of course we've both been around forever. And we would walk over to that Big Boy or drive over, and Hank would teach me talk about the ecology of the Great Lakes when I was just getting started. And I know he did that with a lot of postdocs and a lot of students. But over a sandwich, not a donut.
That's great.
That's excellent. All right, since we're on the topic, I have to ask, and Carolyn's going to kill me, and that's fine. But so, Hank, you've done a lot of work on invasive species, right? And so one of the key invasive species in the Great Lakes is the round goby, right? So this is an idea I have. So they're kind of tubular, right, in shape. So I'm thinking if Sea Grant doesn't work out for me, which it might not after this episode, of starting a business where you sell goby dogs on a stand in Chicago. You pop them in a bun, a little mustard, maybe a pickle, some relish. Have you eaten a goby before, Hank?
No, I haven't, but they actually canned them in Eastern Europe. So you can buy canned gobies.
Look at that. And so goby dog, that sounds, you're the first person to not spit at me when I've said this. So you see, there's a lot of Eastern European culture in Chicago. So I think this could work, actually.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know. That's the politest way of saying buzz off I've ever heard.
I actually think that, Hank, you need to realize just how much this is going to buoy Stuart up in terms of his Goby Dog franchise.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing. It's not a thing yet, but it will be a thing one day. So I'm fired up about the Goby Dogs, more so than ever. All right, and the second one of our key questions, the real reason we invited you is this. And Margaret, I would love to start with you on this one. And this whole thing has been that a little bit, but what is it that makes you good at being a communications specialist, right? What are the key skills for your kind of work?
Well, there's sort of the obvious, being a writer, being comfortable talking to people. But I would say to other communication specialists, anybody considering it, it's important to navigate your organization, whatever it might be, and to learn about that. So, Sea Grant, NOAA, we're within a network, and so get to know your networks because the lakes are vast. There's so many things to message about. You leverage your network. So being a boundary runner, I think I'm a natural at that. I would call it, where you can navigate between organizations and understand who you got to get to know, in order to get your message out. So there's more than just that outward outreach. It's in reach and navigating and getting the support of your leadership and the scientists that you touched on and building those relationships, because it's still kind of a new field, and there's some places where there's hardly any thought about science communication. So just helping to expand that network, that's what I would say.
And Hank, how about you? So you're a research psychologist at a federal agency, right? What makes you good at that job? What are key skills for that type of work?
Yeah, many of the skills are the same for any, let's say, an academic scientist. This would include a curiosity of the world around us, paying attention to detail, continual learning, and being able to design experiments and test hypotheses. And then there's one last skill, and that's to be able to anticipate the next big question where others have not explored. And in part, that's driven by experience. And I would say it's what we don't know that's important.
That's wonderful. I can't think of a better way to wrap it up than that. Hank Vanderplug, Dr. Hank Vanderplug, research ecologist and ecosystem dynamics branch chief at NOAA's Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory, GLERL as I call it, and the Iagler Lifetime Achievement Award winner, and Margaret Lansing, communications specialist at the Lake, at GLERL also, and the Jack Valentine Award winner. Thank you so much for coming on and teaching us all about the Great Lakes. It's always great to be part of the Iagler conference and to interview their award winners. It's, I learn a lot with these things, right? Because these are people who, they just have a ton of experience, and experience is interesting to talk to, I suppose.
Right, yeah. And so we want to thank the Iagler, the conference organizing committee, and the board, really. Ed Verhaney is probably the person that we should thank the most, who is the outgoing president or past president. I cannot remember which one it is. So for helping set up this. And then also Paula McIntyre, who's the Iagler communications coordinator, who really helped us set this up. So thanks to Paula and Ed, we were really excited to be able to do this again. We hope we get to do it next year. Maybe at some point we'll get to do this actually live at Iagler, but who knows? And then you will have a better...
You'd have to get me out of my cave first, so we'll see.
Right. So
theoretically, it would be great. Yes.
Yeah. So if any of our listeners want to learn about it, I know that something that was really great about this year's conference was they were sort of they're becoming more intentional about making sure they include additional voices at the table. And so it's literally IAGLR.org. But if you have any interest in the Great Lakes, or you're excited about the Great Lakes, you want to become involved somehow, I encourage you to go check them out. They are interested in pulling more voices in, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that really is. Great. And then one announcement before we wrap up, and that is we announced it last month, but I want to remind you, we are going to convene the very first meeting of the Teach Me About the Great Lakes Book Club. We're going to be reading and discussing Dan Egan's Death and Life of the Great Lakes sometime late summer, early fall. no later than next year. But just depends. We're going to be using that book for a couple of things, and we thought it'd be a great chance to talk about it. So if you want to take part in that, please go ahead and check it out, start reading it. We're going to take listener emails and calls. Who knows? Maybe the calls will happen live on the air. And but we want to talk about it. So I encourage you to check that book out if you want to participate in the book club.
It's also just a really great book.
Oh yeah, there's that too. There's a certain quality of the book in and of itself, but that's not like high on my list of why I care about it. I care about it for me, which is I would like you to participate in our podcast. So I really care about you, listener, a lot more than I care about the book. So you're welcome for that.
Teach Me About the Great Lakes is brought to you by the fine people at Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. We encourage you to check out the great work we do at iiseagrant.org and at ILIN Sea Grant on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media. Teach Me About the Great Lakes is produced by Hope Charters, Carolyn Foley, Gunn, and Irene Miles. Ethan Chitty is our associate producer and fixer. Our super fun podcast artwork is by Joel Davenport. The show is edited by the awesome Gwyn Rose, and I encourage you to check her work out at aspiringrobot.com. If you have a question or comment about the show, please email it to teachmeaboutthegreatlakes@gmail.com or leave a message on our fabulous hotline at 765-496-IISG. You could also follow the show on Twitter at Teach Great Lakes. Thanks for listening, and keep greeting those lakes. I was actually going to make that sound myself, but then you played it.
Hello, this is Ashley Elgin. I want to say congratulations to you, Hank, for receiving your IAGLR Achievement Award. You are certainly a major player in Great Lakes limnology, and I'm in awe of the depth and breadth of your knowledge. And as far as being a supervisor and mentor, you are very understanding, yet you still set a high bar. So as a result, in this last crazy year, it was a pretty productive one for me, and I mostly kept my sanity. So thanks for being a great colleague, and again, many congratulations.
Thanks. Congratulate you on such an impressive career and the Lifetime Achievement Award that IAGLR is bestowing upon you this year. Your publications, your leadership speak for themselves over your 48-year career. And I'm just counting 48 since your first publication. I'm not exactly sure when you would think your career started. But, you know, one thing that sticks out to me is that if you're an invasive invertebrate in the Great Lakes, look out. Hank is coming to study you and to explain your effects to the rest of us. Hank really did pioneering work on Dreissenid mussels and Bythotrephes or spiny water flea, to name a few. I also just want to thank Hank for his kindness in working with me and my USGS colleagues over the years. You know, on a personal note, I have a good memory of cross-country skiing with Hank one night in Muskegon, Michigan, probably a decade or so ago. I was a novice, you know, not from the Great Lakes region, and he was a great teacher on the best techniques. And for those of you that don't know about Hank's dedication, it extends not only to research, but also to physical fitness. Just another inspirational side of Hank. He was hard to keep up with on the trails that winter night. So anyway, congratulations again, Hank. And I'm sure you're going to keep on producing many good works over the next decades going forward. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Debbie Lee with NOAA's Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory. I'm very pleased to congratulate Hank Vanderplug for receiving the IAGLR Lifetime Achievement Award. His ecological research has addressed nearly all major concerns that have impacted the Great Lakes over the past 50 years as an internationally known authority on food webs. My favorite memory of Hank is his reminding me that we must first seek to understand and then predict. So congratulations again, Hank, and the whole laboratory celebrates with you. Thank you.
This is Hunter Carrick at Central Michigan University. I'm calling to wish Hank Vanderplug a hearty congratulations on the Lifetime Achievement Award from IAGLR. Hank's research has not only added to the conversation on understanding trophic dynamics in the Great Lakes, he's changed the conversation in many ways, and not many of us can brag that. And his understanding of the individual biology and autoecology of zooplankton and other organisms is truly unique. So a hearty congratulations to Hank.
Hi, this is Ed Rutherford calling to congratulate Hank Vanderplug on receiving the IAGLR Lifetime Achievement Award. It's certainly well-deserved. Not only has he sustained excellence in the laboratory and the field, I think he has excelled as the Ecodyne branch chief at NOAA GLERL and as a mentor to younger and older scientists. His embrace of new technology and ideas and careful experiments on zooplankton and Dreissena feeding have kept him solidly in Pasteur's quadrant throughout his career. My favorite memory of Hank is leading the Diel spatial structure cruises in the early 2010s and diving as enthusiastically into the food served as he did the expeditions we made. Let's hope we all can return to the lab after we weather the COVID fallout. Congrats, Hank.
Hi, Margaret. It's Steve Franker calling. I just wanted to say congratulations on receiving the Jack Valentine Award. It's certainly well-deserved. I've really appreciated working with you over the years, especially on the tours of GLERL for my students. When you relate your own story of your professional journey from starting off as an EMU student to eventually working for NOAA, that really provides a great example to my current students at Eastern. And, you can sometimes see it in their eyes as it dawns on some of them that similar professional pathways are out there and open for them too. I think it's a real inspiration for them. Thank you very much for sharing that. Again, congratulations on the Valentine Award. Great job.
Hi, this is Debbie Lee. I'm director of NOAA's Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory. I'm very happy to congratulate Margaret Lansing on winning the IAGLR Jack Valentine Award for Great Lakes Communication. The depth, breadth, and longevity of her efforts in championing the Great Lakes through communication is absolutely astounding. And I say that without hesitation, and I believe she's unparalleled in her efforts. Reading her letters of support brought tears to my eyes because it was clear how many lives she's touched through promoting Great Lakes awareness and stewardship. My favorite memories of Margaret are seeing her lead tours of GLERL, explaining our science in ways everyone can understand, whether it's a senator or a student. So congratulations again, Margaret. The whole lab celebrates with you.
Hi, this is Try 2 from Margaret Lansing's Award on Outreach, and this is Donna Cashin from Wayne State University. My favorite encounter with Margaret's educational programs was along the shores of the Detroit River at Detroit River Days. My group was hosting an educational booth on fishing and associated fishing advisories, and a little girl came up to our booth and had a sea lamprey tattoo on her arm and was excitedly talking about a booth she had just been to that had sea lamprey. During a break, I went over to check it out, and sure enough, Margaret Lansing was running an educational invasive species program for kids K through 12. Detroit River Day draws up to 200,000 people along the Detroit metropolitan area, an area that has struggling school districts, financial challenges, and racial tensions. For many of the kids, this is their only exposure to Great Lakes science. And as expected, Margaret was in the thick of it, sharing information on Great Lakes research with these kids. Thank you.